Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to my first video for Fill My Cup Ministries International. My name is Benjamin. We're going to answer a few questions, hopefully. Hopefully, won't raise more questions. So let's get right into it. Topic today is the millennial reign of Messiah Yeshua. It's a great, but going to be a short study. This will not be an all-inclusive study whatsoever. We will attempt to answer some questions as we look into this period of time in history. First, let's turn to the book of Revelation, chapter 20. You see here I have my eSword Bible program open. Hopefully I can keep the scriptures up to the ones we're talking about. We're going to look at verses 1 through 6 in chapter 20 first. And these verses occur approximately in what we're going to call the creation year 6001. Don't get hung up on the year, but that's approximately the end of the 6th millennium, the beginning of the 7th millennium. So it's when the devil or Satan's bound for 1,000 years. So let's read it. And I saw an angel coming down out of heaven, having the key of the abyss and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold of the dragon, the old serpent who is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and threw him into the abyss, and shut him up, and put a seal over him, that he should not still lead astray the nations, until the 1,000 years are fulfilled. And after these things he must be set loose a little time. And I saw thrones, and they sat on them, and judgment was given to them. And the souls of the ones having been beheaded because of the witness of Yeshua, and because of the word of Yahweh, and who had not worshipped the beast nor its image, and had not received the mark on their forehead and on their hand. And they lived and reigned with Messiah 1,000 years. Imagine that, 1,000 years. This is the first resurrection. That's going to be the rapture and resurrection has taken place. Blessed and holy is the one having part in the first resurrection. The second death has no authority over these, but they will be priests of Yahweh and of his Messiah, and will reign with him 1,000 years. So that's approximately going to happen around a time called, let's call it 6001, the beginning of the 7th millennium. There's not a lot in the scriptures about this 1,000-year period, but we'll try to find a few things mentioned. One thing we know about this period of time is that Yeshua will rule the earth with a rod of iron. That's mentioned a few times in the scriptures. Let's take a peek here in Psalm 2, I think is the first time that's mentioned, possibly. 2 verse 9, what's it say? You shall break them with a rod of iron. You shall dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. It sounds like it's going to be a solid, hard rule. He's going to be a firm ruler. Revelation 11:15 also talks about his reign a little bit. Let's see what we see in Revelation 11:15. And the seventh angel trumpeted, and there were great rumblings of thunder, saying, the kingdoms of this world have become our divine ones, even of his Messiah, and he shall reign forever and ever. Again, I think that's talking about, the seventh trumpet. That's the end of this era and the beginning of the millennial reign of Yeshua. Even Revelation 12:5 even mentions this rod of iron thing, but this goes back to, I think, this is something he was born for. Look at this. Revelation 12:5. She brought forth a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to Yahweh and to his throne. Well, that's something he was born for, ruling with a rod of iron, and that day is rapidly approaching. We're going to see it not many days hence. Another spot where we can see this rod of iron, Revelation 19:15. Let's take a look. Revelation 19:15. And out of his mouth goes forth a sharp sword, that with it he might smite the nations, and he will shepherd them with an iron rod. And he treads the winepress of the wine of the anger and of the wrath of Yahweh Almighty. So after he fulfills the wrath of Yahweh, he's going to rule the earth with a rod of iron. That means a rule of iron law. And so what iron law do you think that might be? Well, folks, ta-da, it's the Torah. Basically, the Sabbath and the feast of Yahweh will be the law upon the whole earth. The whole earth was going to be ruled by the Torah. Yeshua will implement Torah law throughout the earth. Multiplied millions and millions of human laws will be done away with, and we will live by the few 613 laws found in the Torah or Tanakh. Can you imagine wiping out all the human books of law and only having 613 laws to worry about? That's not bad. And a lot of those are just for the priests. We will also see the restoration of Israel. That's something mentioned in Amos 9. Let's see if we can find Amos 9 real quick. Amos 9, 11 through 15. We'll take a peek here. In that day I will raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen, and I will wall up its breaks, and I will raise up its ruins, and I will build it as the days of old, so that they may possess the remnant of Edom and all the nations on whom my name is called, declares Yahweh, who is doing this. Behold, the days are coming, declares Yahweh, that the plowman shall overtake the reaper, and the treader of grapes him who draws along seed. And the mountains shall drip new must, and all the hills will be dissolved. And I will bring back the captivity of my people Israel. They shall build the waste cities and live in them. They shall plant vineyards and drink the wine of them. They shall also make gardens and eat the fruit of them. And I will plant them in their land, and they shall never again be pulled up out of their land, which I have given to them, says Yahweh, your divine one. I think he began fulfilling Amos back in the early 1900s, maybe the late 1800s, when the Jews started going back to Israel. But we definitely know beginning in 1948 when Israel became a nation again. So let's go back to Revelation 20, and we're going to move forward. How about that? 1,000 years between verse 6 and verse 7. 1,000 years goes by. There's absolutely nothing written in Revelation 20 about those 1,000 years. But we see what happens approximately now. We're up to the year 7001. And we're starting in verse 7 of chapter 20 of Revelation. And whenever the 1,000 years are completed, Satan will be set loose out of his prison. And he will go to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth. Let's see if we got this down here. Yeah, there we go. Gog and Magog, to assemble them to war. Personally, I believe this is the Ezekiel 38 war, but we'll talk about that a little bit later, just to mention it a little later also in the study. Whose number is as the sand of the sea. And they went up over the breadth of the land and encircled the camp of the saints and the beloved city, which of course that's Jerusalem. And fire from Yahweh came down out of heaven and consumed them. And the devil leading them astray was thrown into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet were. And they were tormented day and night for ages to the ages. And I saw a great white throne. Whoa, how about that? Immediately we come to the great white throne judgment, and one sitting on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled, and a place was not found for them. Now remember, this is year approximately 7001. This is at the end of the millennial reign of Yeshua. This is final judgment day, great white throne judgment. And I saw the dead, the small and the great, standing before Yahweh, and books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of the things written in the books according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead in it, and death and the grave gave up the dead in them. And they were each judged according to their works. And death and the grave were thrown into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And if anyone was not found having been written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. So that's the end of the reign of Yeshua as far as the millennial reign. But Yeshua is going to reign, once he comes back to earth, he's going to reign forever. But this first 1,000 years is what's commonly known as the millennial reign of Yeshua HaMashiach. So here's a question we'll try to answer maybe. What's it say? Do we come instantly back with Yeshua after the rapture resurrection? Well, my personal belief is I think we're going to go up in the air, possibly up to heaven. We're going to be in the air anyway, probably in the heavens for possibly 3 weeks with Yeshua for a wedding feast during the month of Tishri. That's basically what the fall feasts are about. And that's before we return to earth to reign. But we are coming back to earth, as it says in Revelation 5:10. In fact, let's go to Revelation 5:10 so you can read that for yourself. Revelation 5:10. And made them kings and priests to our divine one, and they shall reign on the earth. That is where we're headed. We're going to be made kings and priests, and we're going to reign on this earth with Yeshua for 1,000 years. So we saw above there in Revelation 4 and 5 that we reign with him for 1,000 years. And here we see it's on earth, not in heaven. So the question is, do we go to heaven? Well, again, I think maybe for up to 3 weeks, up through the Feast of Sukkot or Tabernacles, which is going to include the marriage supper and the wedding feast. It's going to probably happen during the Feast of Tabernacles on a year that's coming up soon, I hope. Very soon, I hope. Let's go to Revelation 19, 7 through 9. See some of this. Let us rejoice and let us exult, and we will give glory to him, because the marriage of the Lamb came, and his wife prepared herself. And it was given to her that she be clothed in fine linen, pure and bright, for the fine linen is the righteousness of the saints. And he said to me, Write, blessed are the ones having been called to the marriage supper of the Lamb. And he said to me, These words of Yahweh are true. The Feast of Tabernacles rehearses this future marriage supper and wedding, but it won't last more than a week, or a total of 3 weeks will probably be up there. That's assuming Yeshua comes back on Tishri 1, which would be the Feast of Trumpets, which is a real possibility. When the last trumpet blows, he's going to show up. That's when the rapture resurrection takes place, and he returns. But we're going to come back with him, as it says in Revelation 19:14. Take a peek at that. And the armies in heaven followed him on white horses, being dressed in fine linen, white and pure. Notice the direction of travel. Yeshua is coming back down from heaven to earth to reign on the earth. And those of us that are resurrected or raptured are going to go up and meet him. And anybody that's in heaven that Yahweh wants to come back to earth, they're going to all hop in these white horses, and we're going to come back to earth with Yeshua. That's his second coming right there. So here's another question. When are the others judged and taken away? Let's see if we can answer some of this. Basically, that happens when Yeshua returns to earth. Let's take a look at Matthew 25. We'll start at verse 31. For when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. And before him shall be gathered all the nations, and he will separate them from one another, as the shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And indeed he will set the sheep off his right, but the goats off the left hand. Then the king will say to those on his right, Come, the blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I hungered, and you gave me food to eat. I thirsted, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer, saying, Master, when did we see you hungry and fed you, or thirsting and gave you drink? When did we see you a stranger and took you in, or naked and clothed you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and come to you? And answering, the king will say to them, Truly I say to you, insofar as you did it to one of these, the least of my brothers, you did it to me. Then he will also say to those on his left, Go away from me, cursed ones, into the everlasting fire, having been prepared for the devil and his angels. For I hungered, and you did not give me a thing to eat. I thirsted, and you did not give me a thing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not take me in, naked, and you did not clothe me, sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. Then they also will answer him, saying, Master, when did we see you hungering or thirsting, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister to you? He will answer them, saying, Truly I say to you, insofar as you did not do it to one of these, the least, neither did you do it to me. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into everlasting life. That's pretty succinct. That kind of sums it up. That's a quick judgment. Probably one of the first things Yeshua does when he gets back here for some of those folks, some of the wicked. I suppose that's a possibility that could happen at the end of the millennium, but I believe that happens at the beginning of the millennium. And those are minor details. It's going to happen. When it happens is of little concern to me. We just know it's going to happen. Let's take a look at Daniel 7, verse 13 and following. It has a little bit to say. There's a lot in Daniel 7. I was looking in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of the heavens, and he came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And dominion was given to him, and glory, and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. This is what's happening in the year 6001 when Yeshua returns, approximately that time. I, Daniel, was distressed in my spirit amidst my body, and the visions of my head had alarmed me. And I came near one of those who stood by and asked him the truth of all this. And he told me and made me know the meaning of the things. These great beasts are four kings. They shall rise up out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. That's a long time. That sounds like a pretty solid kingdom to me. Then I wanted to know the truth of the fourth beast, which was different from all of them, very frightening, whose teeth were of iron, its nails bronze, who devoured and crushed and trampled what was left with its feet, and also the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other which came up, before whom 3 fell, even that horn that had eyes, a mouth speaking great things, and its appearance was greater than its fellows. I was looking, and that horn made war with the saints and overcame them. This is what you call the great tribulation. Until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Man, that sounds like a great gift. It's going to be given to us and never be taken away from us. That's pretty amazing to me. We could go on there, but that's mostly just second coming things. But also Daniel mentions it. That's basically the end of that, the image of Nebuchadnezzar's image. But let's go to the end of that prophecy. Daniel 2:44 and 45. And in the days of these kings, the divine one of heaven shall set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall crush in pieces and make an end of all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Because you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands. Of course, that's Yeshua. That it broke the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold in pieces. The great divine one has made known to the king what shall occur after this. The dream is certain, the meaning of it is trustworthy. That is Yeshua's second coming and the destruction of the kingdoms of the earth. That sounds like a great time. We're looking forward to that. And that's going to happen soon, sometime around a year, creation year 6001 approximately. So what happens? Here's a question. What happens to the unsaved at the rapture resurrection? Well, unfortunately, most of them are going to die in Yahweh's wrath. Let's take a peek at Isaiah 63, 1 through 6. Who is this who comes from Edom with crimson garments from Basra, this one adorned in his clothing, inclining in his great power? It is I, speaking in righteousness, the great Yeshua. Why is your clothing red, and your garments like one who treads in the winepress? I have trodden the winepress, I alone, and no man of the peoples was with me. And I will tread them in my anger, and trample them in my fury, and their juice shall be spattered on my garments, and I will pollute all my clothes. For the day of vengeance is in my heart, and the year of my redeemed has come. And I looked, and no one was helping, and I was astonished that no one was upholding. Then my own arm saved for me, and my fury upheld me. And I tread down peoples in my anger, and made them drunk in my fury, and I poured their juice to the earth. That's going to be a crushing blow. The nations have no idea what's about to smack them in the head. But they will see. Let's go back to Revelation 19, 11 through 21. That is, again, the second coming. And I saw heaven being opened, and behold, a white horse, and he sitting on it, having been called faithful and true. And he judges and makes war in righteousness. And his eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns with many titles written on it. And one of the titles that had been written no man knew but he himself. And having been clothed in a garment which had been dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of Yahweh. Imagine that. And the armies in heaven followed him on white horses, being dressed in fine linen, white and pure. And out of his mouth goes forth a sharp sword, that with it he might smite the nations. And he will shepherd them with an iron rod, and he treads the winepress of the wine of the anger and of the wrath of Yahweh Almighty. And he has on his garment and on his thigh a name having been written, King of Kings and Master of all masters. And I saw one angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a great voice, saying to all the birds flying in mid-heaven, Come and gather together to the supper of great Yahweh, that you may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of strong ones, and the flesh of horses, and of the ones sitting on them, and the flesh of all, both freemen and slaves, even of the small and great. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth, and their armies being assembled to make war with the one sitting on the horse, and with his army. This is the battle of Armageddon, folks. And the beast was seized, and with this one the false prophet doing signs before it, by which he led astray those having received the mark of the beast and those worshiping its image. The two were thrown alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone. And the rest were killed with the sword of the one sitting on the horse, the sword having gone forth from his mouth, and all the birds were filled from their flesh. That's what's going to happen to the rebellious when Yeshua shows up. And we have Obadiah has a little bit to say on that. Let's take a peek at Obadiah, verses 15 to 21. Let's see what he's got to say. For the day of Yahweh is near on all the nations. As you have done, it shall be done to you. Your reward shall return on your head. He's talking about the nations that come against Jerusalem. For as you have drunk on my holy mountain, so all the nations shall continually drink. Yea, they shall drink and shall swallow, and they will be as if they had not been. But the ones who escape shall be on Mount Zion, and it shall be holy, and the house of Jacob shall possess their own possessions. And the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for straw. And they shall burn among them and consume them. And no survivor shall be to the house of Esau, for Yahweh has spoken. And those of Negev shall possess the mountain of Esau, and the low country of the Philistines, and they shall possess Ephraim's fields, and Samaria's fields, and Benjamin shall possess Gilead. And the exiles of this forest shall go to the sons of Israel, who shall possess the land of the Canaanites, to Zarephath. Even the exiles of Jerusalem, who are in Sepharad, shall possess the cities of the Negev. And deliverers shall go up into the mountain of Zion to judge the mountain of Esau, and the kingdom shall be to Yahweh. Yeah, there's some rough times coming for the nations of the earth. So, well, there's another question here. When approximately is the second death, white throne judgment? Well, we talked about that already. Approximately in the year 7001. As we saw, that's in Revelation 11 through 15. So that's at the end of the millennial reign of Yeshua on the earth. And what about, will the unsaved be alive during the millennial reign? I say yes. There's going to be some people that survive. A good chapter to see those days is Zechariah. Or Zechariah go? Chapter 14. I think I'm just going to read the whole chapter. This is an amazing, this covers a lot of ground. Zechariah 14. Behold, the day of Yahweh comes, and your spoil shall be divided among you. For I will gather all the nations to battle against Jerusalem, and the city shall be captured, and the houses plundered, and the women raped. And half the city shall go into exile, and the rest of the people shall not be cut off from the city. And Yahweh shall go out and fight against those nations, like the day he fought in the day of battle. And his feet shall stand in that day on the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall divide from its middle, from the east even to the west, a very great valley. Half the mountain shall move toward the north, and half of it toward the south. This is Yeshua's second advent. This is him landing on earth. This is what's going to happen when he lands. When we are right behind him on those white horses, this is the first place he lands, is on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. And you shall flee to the valley of my mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach to Azel. And you shall flee as you fled from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. And Yahweh, my divine one, shall come, and all the saints with you. Oh, there it is. It says we're coming with him. I'll be darned. Coming to earth. Not heaven, earth. And it will be in that day there shall not be light. The glorious ones will shrink. And it will be one day which shall be known to Yahweh, not day and not night, but it will be, there will be light at evening time. And that shall be in that day, living waters shall go out from Jerusalem. Half of them shall go toward the eastern sea, and half of them toward the western sea. In summer and in winter it shall be. And Yahweh shall be king over all the earth. In that day Yahweh shall be united, and his name united. All the land shall be turned as a plain from Geba to Rimmon, south of Jerusalem, and it shall rise and dwell in its place, from Benjamin's gate to the place of the first gate, to the corner gate, and from the tower of Hananiel to the king's wine presses. And they shall live in it, and there shall not again be a shutting in, but Jerusalem shall dwell safely. And this shall be the plague with which Yahweh will strike all the peoples who have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall rot while they stand on their feet, and their eyes will melt in their sockets, and their tongues shall rot in their mouths. Sounds like nuclear warfare to me. And there shall be in that day a great panic of Yahweh shall be among them, and they shall each one lay hold of his neighbor, and his hand shall rise up against the hand of his neighbor. And Judah also shall fight at Jerusalem, and the wealth of the surrounding nations shall be gathered. gold and silver and clothing very much. And so shall be the plague of the horse, the mule, the camel, and the donkey, and all the beasts which shall be in those camps like this plague. And it shall be, every one who is left from all the nations which came up against Jerusalem shall go up from year to worship the King, Yahweh of hosts, and to keep the feast of Sukkot, which is the Feast of Tabernacles. And this is during the millennial reign of Yeshua. Notice the law of the feast of the Lord will be celebrated every year. And it shall be, whoever will not go up from the families of the earth to Jerusalem to worship the King, Yahweh of hosts, there shall even be no rain on them. If the family of Egypt does not go up, nor come in, then the rain shall not be on them. But the plague with which Yahweh shall strike the nations who do not come up to keep the feast of Sukkot. This shall be Egypt's offense, and the offense of all nations who do not come up to keep the feast of Sukkot. In that day there shall be on the bells of the horses, holy to Yahweh. And the pots in the temple of Yahweh shall be like the bowls before the altar. Oh, look at that. There's going to be a temple. Who would have thought? And every pot in Jerusalem and in Judah shall be holy to Yahweh of hosts. And all those who sacrifice shall come and take of them, and boil in them. And in that day there shall not be a traitor in the temple of Yahweh of hosts any more. How about that? Yeshua had to clean them out twice during his earthly ministry. He's not going to allow them to even come in during the millennial reign. There's not going to be any more merchandising or selling books and DVDs and CDs in the church of the Almighty. Not in his temple, not during the millennium. So what else do we have a question about? When is the Gog and Magog war? Well, there's two Gog-Magog wars, in my very humble opinion. The Ezekiel 39 war, I believe, occurs approximately in the year 6001, at the beginning of the 7th millennium, or at the end of the 6th millennium, however you want to look at it. And the Ezekiel 38 war occurs approximately 7001, 1,000 years later, which we just saw up in Revelation 20. And you can look on the internet and you can find studies related to this on how Ezekiel 38 and 39 are not talking about one war, but they're talking about two wars called Gog-Magog, 1,000 years apart. So I'm going to study the text, my notes here. I'll go ahead and post them on my blog, which is at www.ourdailydrink.wordpress.com. And also, I had done a study on this back, I think, in 2013 or sometime like that, titled Millennial Reign, a Scriptural Snapshot. Uses a lot of these same scriptures, but there's some other scripture references in that study. I'll repost that one too, so you don't have to hunt for it on my blog. So you all have a wonderful Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for your time. I hope you found this interesting. I mean, there's probably lots of other scriptures we could have pulled up, but this is enough to whet your appetite and look forward to Yeshua's return. Look forward to his millennial reign, because you're going to have some responsibility. You're going to be a priest and a king. So get ready for it. The kingdom's coming to you to possess. Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.